also live on Facebook. Today's podcast will start in approximately 1 minute.
All right, let's go.
We are live. Happy Stanley Cup final day and welcome to the Hockey Podcast. Happy Saturday to you. You can follow us on Twitter at podcast_hockey. You can also, if you're watching on Facebook, just click that like button on Facebook there. You can also subscribe on YouTube if you're watching live on YouTube as well. And also as well, we are there. We are also going to subscribe on iTunes, Google, iHeartRadio, Spotify, or wherever you get your favorite podcast. And Tyler is with us. Good morning, Tyler. How are you?
Morning, guys. Nice to be back on. Sorry I missed out last weekend. We just so rarely get sunshine on the weekend around here that I had to take advantage of it there last weekend. So I apologize for missing out, but good to be back with you.
Chris did not forgive you. No, I'm just kidding. Chris forgave you. Hello, Chris.
I'm quite forgiving. Thank you very much. And hello.
Hello. I see you still have your lineup up from last week.
Well, I need to have something while the Canucks are out before the next season. So that'll be up for a couple of months at this point.
Yes, that's true. And Sean, hello.
Hello, Kevin. I'm doing well. Yeah, Tyler, don't worry. Devin didn't review too hard last week for skipping out, but he's missing now. He's out in Brooks selling strippers.
That's what we read. That's what we had.
That is. I'm going to read the exact message.
That's the information.
We are not kidding. This is exactly what he says. I am in smelly old Brooks this weekend selling strippers. It was super slow yesterday, so if it is again today, I could do a quick hit. That is, everyone here, that is exactly what is said in the message.
I hope that was an autocorrect.
So, but just to clear things up, Devin is down in Cale Makar's old stomping grounds in the AJHL in Brooks, Alberta. He must be at a market selling vegetable peelers. And that's what he's doing this weekend. So vegetable strippers, vegetable peelers.
Yeah.
Maybe it is strippers. We don't know.
Good God, we're driving through the cliff here. Okay, let's
Words
turn.
matter.
We're going to start with the Flames because we usually start with the Canucks, and sometimes we'd like to flip it up. And I know Heidi is listening. Hello, Heidi. I know Heidi's busy as well, and she probably wants to hear some Flames. But Jeff Ward, the interim tag, was removed. But actually, let's go through the news of how this looked, and I'm going to give my theory, and you guys can agree or disagree with what my theory is. So Peter Laviolette was named the head coach of the Washington Capitals on Sunday, and that was a $3 million contract. and Jeff Ward was named the head coach of the Flames. And we talked about this last week, how it was really weird that it took so long for the Flames to decide on Jeff Ward. So, and that's a $900,000 contract that Jeff Ward has signed to be the coach of the Flames. We'll get into what Brad Treliving had to say in a little bit, but here is my theory. I think the Flames were looking outside first. I do not believe that Jeff Ward was the number one option, but I do not believe that they were willing to pay $3 million for Peter Laviolette to be the coach of the Calgary Flames. Am I illogical in my thinking here, or is there some truth to what I'm saying?
That sound logic to me.
Yeah, I think you're right there, Kev. I think they did like what Jeff Ward brought. And he brought some stability after everything that went down with Bill Peters. He seems to have the room, but I think they knew that they couldn't just bring him on because of how they exited the playoffs and how they've played over the past couple of years. They needed to go out and see what else was out there. Laviolette and Gallant were the two names that everyone was talking about. I'm not sure what happened with Gallant, but I think $3 million for Laviolette is within the market for him. And I just don't think that the Flames were willing to match maybe term or whatever with that. I believe the other thing that may have swayed the Laviolette to go to Washington was the fact, I believe there was a clause in there that he gets paid no matter what in Washington, and I don't think that's something that the Flames would have offered.
Yeah, I mean, to just drop the interim tag and not have a process to see what other options are out there wouldn't be a thorough process for the organization. It's due diligence to kick the tires at the very least on what the other options are. I mean, getting a guy like a Peter Laviolette who's got a pretty extensive resume there, to get him to come to a Canadian market and coach, I think it's got to be a pretty significant offer there, and especially if Peter's got some other options available to him. So Jeff Ward, I think, did a great job with the Flames, considering the circumstances he entered the role. Give him another year and take the interim tag off and see what he can do. I think he's earned that opportunity.
What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I would agree with that. Like, he seemed to do decently well in the portion of the season that he did coach for, and I think that he's at least deserving of a more time to be able to show that he's actually an NHL bench boss and can handle that pressure. And I think he's done well enough that he deserved the extension.
Yeah. So this is what Treliving said on Monday. Those are the there's part of this game where there's a technical side, but I think the ability to genuinely inspire people and push them beyond places that they think that they can get to. I felt Jeff was the absolute best person to carry us forward. And of course, he 25-15-3 record, and then knocked off the Jets in the qualifying round. I guess then the next question would be, from the Flames' perspective, does that mean Johnny Gaudreau is out? My theory would be, if you're bringing back Jeff Ward, you are also establishing some sort of identity with this team. And Jeff Ward certainly has a lot of, I'm sorry to do this, 2011 Boston Bruins style in him. Like, it feels that that's where the Calgary Flames are trying to build a little bit of a Boston Bruins style of team. I'm not saying that that's right or wrong, but that's the observation that I'm getting. Does that mean that you pretty much settled that Johnny Gaudreau is gone next year?
I don't think it's settled. I think this does open the door for one or two major moves for sure. I don't at this point, if you're not shaking up the coaching staff, you have to shake up the roster. And what better way to shake that roster up than make a move with one of your top your two guys that have been around the longest, in Monahan or Gaudreau. I know Jeff Ward, I think, likes Monahan more, so I think maybe there will be. I think Gaudreau's the more likelier option to move, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's Monahan instead of Gaudreau. But yeah, I do think I think this just opens the door even wider for a bigger shakeup within the roster for the Flames, as opposed to hoping that a new coach could change it up.
I think there's no question they got to move some kind of a big piece to get over this hump and take a step forward in the postseason. And if it's not Gaudreau, like Sean says, Monahan, you'd have to think might be in play to get moved there, or one of the bigger pieces on defense. But I don't know. I see a shakeup in the forward group more likely than on the back end.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with that. The forwards definitely seem to be where they probably need to make the biggest change. And yeah, Johnny seems to be the black sheep out of that group as far as Ward style coaching.
Yeah, now just because Johnny's getting whipped in the media by a certain columnist doesn't mean the organization's feeling the same way. But what they have there is just not going to push them any further. I think most people can feel definitive about that. Like, this is only going to take them so far. They've got to make changes, and as Sean said, they're not changing the coach. So we look at the roster now.
Now, I want to clarify a little bit of what Chris went off of, saying that it's the forwards that need the changing. I disagree. I think I like the forward group that the Flames have, but they've got depth there. They've got the ability to move a Gaudreau or a Monahan and not feel as barren up there as if they were to move a Rasmus Anderson or someone like that, because outside of Giordano, they don't. There isn't really someone that I feel. If you legitimately look at it, is there someone that you feel comfortable that will be able to step up into a top pair role next year? So I do think that moving a forward for a defenseman and a younger defenseman who can move the puck as well as play a little and can defend the rush better, I think is something that the Flames need to look at for sure.
And then there were the rumors. Again, these are rumors, but the talk out of Minnesota is that they're wanting to move Matt Dumba. They signed Jonas Brodin to a 7-year, $42 million extension this week. So, in flat cap and wanting to make splashes, Minnesota is in play. They absolutely need a center. And the idea of Matt Dumba coming to the Flames for Sean Monahan had some Flames fans excited. There was also, we'll get to Brock Besser in a minute, and that we'll talk about that from the Canucks perspective in a moment. But what you could do, I could see, is if you are trading Monahan, you move Lindholm to center, you've settled that issue. You've got Sam Bennett, who probably can play center. You've got Michael Backlund, who you can move from 2 to 3 if you're slotting. You don't necessarily need Monahan or Gaudreau could be expendable, because you can, in theory, move Monahan to the wing if you wanted to. So to me, it does open a door for a Monahan and Gaudreau to be moved. Now, for Gaudreau, this is, for me, I think it's almost would be a blessing in disguise for Gaudreau to get out of Calgary. I just think this last year and a half, has worked for him. I think that there's, on one end, the coaching, he hasn't played well. But on the other hand, I would also argue, if I was from Gaudreau's camp, that they haven't used him necessarily in effective Johnny Gaudreau ways. They haven't given him the space to move. And this is one of my critiques and why I'm not necessarily sold on the Jeff Ward hire, is I don't know if he's tactically strong enough with in this conference where you have a Paul Maurice, and yes, okay, he beat Paul Maurice, but you've got a Craig Berube, you've got a number of different teams, Rick Bowness, who are able to match up and adjust their lines accordingly, or as even a Travis Green, do some line juggling. I don't know if Jeff Ward has that in him to do that, and I don't know if they put Johnny Gaudreau in necessarily the best situations for him to be successful, and I think another team would use him a lot better.
Oh, I agree there, Kev. I do think that how Jeff Ward coached in the playoffs left a lot to be left a lot out there. We lauded what Travis Green did with the Canucks in the St. Louis series in particular, in how he was able to juggle things around and find lines that worked and lines that were able to capitalize on their matchups versus St. Louis. So it's definitely going to be something he has to work on. This is his first time coaching and as a head coach in the NHL, and we talk so much about how players need to develop and players need to learn and everything like that. But it's the exact same thing as with coaches. They're not going to be perfect first time out. They're not going to be perfect right away. They're going to take their lumps and they're going to have to learn from them. I think that's why when we as Canucks fans were so elated with how Travis Green coached these playoffs, is that he was able to make adjustments and change and learn and figure things out from series to series, game to game, and then going big picture from his first year to this year since taking over. And that's just something that I think Flames fans need to take into account here. The questions are there for Jeff Ward for sure. I think he's a player's coach. I personally think he needs to rule with a little more of an iron fist in terms of lines. Because what was the talk during the regular season when he moved Elias Lindholm to center and the Flames played really well? Yes, the points for Lindholm weren't there, but overall he was playing better, in my opinion, and I think a lot of people's opinions. And then he ended up moving him back to the right wing with Johnny and Bonnie because they went to him and were wanting him to do that. And I think he needs to learn from that and stick to his guns a little bit more in terms of what he thinks makes this team better in terms of lines.
I think Sean alluded to it earlier. I mean, continuity, stability. I think that's an important factor here too. In the Flames deciding to keep Jeff Ward for sure, because you had Bill Peters for last season, and then into the start of this season, and then prior to that, you had Glenn Galutzin, I think, for 2 years, and then Bob Hartley. That doesn't even seem like that long ago either. So it's been quite a lot of turnover in that position. So let's give the guy a chance.
Yeah, Tyler makes a strong point there. They definitely probably can use some consistency behind the bench.
Mm-hmm.
From 2016 through till now, that this would be they hired Gulutzin from in 2016 to replace Hartley, and then they went with Bill Peters for a season and a half, and now they're at Jeff Ward. So it's not Edmonton Oilers bad in terms of head coach turnover, but it's still something that you can't, if you're continue to turn over head coaches every season to 2 seasons, that's a big issue. So I think it's having some sort of a continuity here, and hoping that you can make some moves to change things up within the roster. I think it is the right move, despite all the questions.
And there's plenty of room for Ward to grow as a head coach as well. People sort of overlook that. I think sometimes, you watch your team grow as a group of players, but the coach grows with the team as well. And Travis Green's talked about that at a couple of points in the recent playoff run for the Canucks.
Yeah. The Oilers had, by the way, they've had McClellan, Hitchcock, and now Tippett. So it's actually almost pretty similar.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think it's that different.
Well, with those, you have to go back a little bit farther because they've had you have to go back like within like 8 years. They've had like I think 8 coaches or something like that, or 7 coaches.
Yeah, if you go back further, I think there was Todd Nelson, there was Ralph Kruger, there was Dallas Eakins, there was Pat Quinn in there somewhere, there was Tom Rennie. That's right. So I feel like I'm missing one in there as well, but now there's been an enormous amount of turnover.
Yeah. Yes, that's Chris is counting there. Yeah. For
yeah.
Sure. The poll question I had today we have a poll question: is would you rather trade for? Well, word it this way: trade for Matt Dumba or spend about $7 million, which probably you'll have to move a piece to keep him around, Alex Pietrangelo. Who would you rather have? As Pietrangelo was told by the St. Louis Blues to explore unrestricted free agency.
And Pietrangelo is probably going to get 8+, maybe 9+. So you like Roman Josi got $9 million a lot for the when he signed. I don't think he's going to get that because of the uncertainty of the market. But I do think that he's going to get at least significantly above 7, likely above 8, I think. So Dumba makes 6. I honestly think you go with I think you spend the money on Pietrangelo. He's a significantly better defenseman, and if you can get him at say $1.5 to $2 million more per season, do it.
Yeah, I would have to agree with that. I would personally go for Pietrangelo over Dumba. But that being said, if you're trying to be frugal and whatnot, Dumba does make more sense. But yeah, as far as if we're just talking about high-end capabilities of the players, I would go Pietrangelo.
Just on pedigree alone, I think you have to go with Pietrangelo as well.
Yeah. Okay. And that's so far what Twitter has agreed with you.
Yeah.
So, Pietrangelo is leading. Although I think both are good acquisitions, and I think one is a captain, one could be a future captain for sure. Anything else with the Flames that we need to talk about? All right, we'll move on here. If you have any points, comments, put them in the chat. We'll try to get to them a little bit later on. But Brock Besser spoke to the media today, and well, not today, this week. So did Quinn Hughes. In terms of Quinn Hughes feeling, some of the highlights from what Hughes said is in terms of Chris Tanev, feeling that Chris Tanev is going to come back. I don't see it the same way, Quinn, but I understand where you're coming from, and you're in the dressing room. You certainly probably know more than I do. But Brock Besser, I think that this is, we'll start with Besser maybe first, because this is such a fascinating off season for Brock Besser. Because if you've signed Tyler Toffoli and you're wanting to get that defenseman, Brock Besser is going to be a logical piece to move. Although, do you really want to do that to bring in a defenseman? So I guess now that we're in the off season, I'll start with Chris. Kind of, where are you at with Brock Besser? Are you open to trading him if you were to get a defenseman, or is he part of the core of the Vancouver Canucks that you should not touch?
Well, he definitely is part of the core, but out of all those core pieces, the one that's going to be the most easily movable without freaking out the fan base, or I guess just disrupting the balance in the organization, I feel like Besser is kind of the easy pick as far as someone that it would be the easiest to trade. Because, Hughes, Pettersson, Bo, Mark, and even Markey, I feel like they're untouchable as far as trading is concerned. Maybe I might take Markey back, but the other three definitely are, solidified, not moving, going to be Canucks for a long time. If you have the right trade proposal in front of you, I feel like Brock could potentially be moved.
Here's the deal with all these Besser talks is the reason he's in there is he is the most attractive available player that can bring you back a significant piece. We all want Eriksson gone. We all want Sutter gone because of their contracts. Jay Beagle as well, in terms of contracts, is someone that a lot of people want moved out. We'll throw in Antoine Roussel and the unknowns of Michael Furland. Those are all the big names that are Jordy Ben as well. With $2 million is a significant enough cap hit that people are hoping that they can. And then the dead cap of Sven Baertschi. There's so many of those other ones, but they're not going to bring back a piece that's going to help your team next season. And the thing with the Canucks is when you look at how things are setting up for them, this upcoming season is the last season that Elias Pettersson and Quinn Hughes have are on their ELCs, and after that, they're good between the two of them. They're going to make $20 million. They're going to take up $20 million of the Canucks cap going into the 21-22 season. And that's fine. That they're worth it. That they are your two core pieces that you build around. Forget everyone else. Like having Bo Horvat as captain's fantastic. Having Brock Besser with them potentially fantastic, awesome. Having Demko or Markstrom as backstopping the Canucks for the foreseeable future, that's awesome. But the two players you're building around are those two, and so 20 million is fine, but that's still a significant amount of cap that they have to navigate around, and they need to be able to fill the rest of the roster. And what was the one area on the roster that we felt the Canucks have needed help on all season? The blue line. So how are they going to be able to improve that without giving up something of value? They have to get lucky. Yeah. They either have to give up not sign one of their big three free agents that everyone wants signed, or they're going to have to move one of their top end players to create the cap room and use them as assets to trade them. So that's the only reason he's in the trade rumors, is because he is the easiest player to move to bring back a significant piece to help improve this roster. Does moving Besser actually help improve the roster? That's very debatable, though, and that is the debate. Is moving Brock Besser for a defenseman worth it? We've seen it's such a hard trade to make. Like, let's go right back to the Oilers and the Taylor Hall for Adam Larson trade. Mm-hmm. That did not work out for them. So if you're going to make that trade, you have to get the right defenseman. Absolutely right defenseman. You can't have a good one who can maybe play good defense, but if he's not adding anything else, then there's an issue. So that's why there's so much angst in terms of how that trade could go down.
I think, to me, I guess I'm with Sean. I don't think that the Canucks are necessarily out to. They don't. It's not that they dislike Besser. It's almost a sales chip, and it's a really. If you're going to do it, there's two difficulties with this. I mean, you need to make sure that you're signing to Foley. Obviously, that becomes, and in my opinion, is the number 2 priority for the Canucks. And then you also have the other issue, and is Jake Virtanen, and probably I'm not criticizing Travis. I'm not comparing him with Johnny Gaudreau, but maybe like Johnny Gaudreau, he certainly probably could at least use a change of scenery. I'm not sure with Jake Virtanen what that solution is, but he's certainly not going to get you the same value that Brock Besser would. But if you're trading Besser and you are going, and if you're losing Virtanen, you've got Toffoli on the right side, and that's pretty much it. And then you need to then make sure that you can find some forwards to fix that. It's a very difficult situation to pull off, I think. And to get that right defenseman. And it sounds to me they're looking at a right shot defenseman, because Matt Dumba was in there. Now Damon Severson is another name that has come up from New Jersey. So it is a very it's a tough trade for the Canucks to win trading Brock Besser, in my mind.
I think it's tough for them to win trading anybody at this point here. Like, to me, there's a feeling of we got to get rid of people. Like that's kind of like almost a bit of a narrative that's coming through from what I can tell, and you got to be careful with that. Just making deals for the sake of making deals is not the way to run the organization, in my opinion. So Going back to what Sean was talking about, Besser offers the best chance at a good return. I wanted to make the point earlier, if the Canucks were going to try and move Louis Eriksson, they may have to do something like the Leafs did and include a draft pick going the other way to actually make that deal happen. And if it's a second round or heaven forbid a first round draft pick, kind of like the Patrick Marleau deal, can you imagine the poop storm that would be happening around the Canucks if that occurred? But that would clear a bunch of cap space. So there's something significant like that that's going to happen if they're serious about contending next year. And the window is now. Again, as Sean pointed out, you've got those two young players on entry level contracts. Next year really is the time to make a move. Go for it.
Hold on, Tyler. Are you suggesting a sweetener?
You can use whatever terms you want to use, guys. Okay.
I got to make a voice for that.
It did cross my mind. I thought I might wow you guys with that, but
I like the Damon Severson idea. I think they can get him for less than Brock Besser too. I think that could be a landing spot for Jake Virtanen in terms of what they can get in terms of Virtanen and something else to get Severson, and I think that would be a really good ad. He's a BC boy. I think they do need to. As weird as it sounds, I do think they're going to need to bring someone in with some BC roots, because I don't think there's a good chance that they lose their two BC born and bred kids that have been very much embraced by the fan base in Virtanen and Stetcher this offseason. All comes down to how things shake out, right? So it would be nice to add that. They can't put too much stock in and weight in that, because that just you end up hurting yourself, like the Habs hurt themselves with always needing to have a French star or a French speaking coach or anything like that. So but Severson does check a lot of boxes for the Canucks if they can pick him up.
Yeah, I have to say, I think Troy Stetcher's going to be back for sure. I think
I'm kind of believing Stetcher will be back too.
It all comes down to what they do to change up this blue line, because they want. I firmly believe that they still want Tanev back, but they aren't having the discussions with him yet until they know what the rest of it looks like. Till they know whether or not they're bringing Toffoli back, till they know whether or not they're bringing Markstrom back and what those numbers look like. He's unfortunately number 3 on their list, but he's still very important to that locker room and on the ice.
Mm-hmm.
You could, in theory, and this is just theory, and I was thinking about this week because I wrote an article on Evolution 1079 about this.
Good plug there.
You could wait and not bring back Tanev at the beginning of the season. You could wait until partially in if Tanev does not get a contract. I don't think you need to rush to get Tanev.
Like the other thing we're looking at is it's October 8th is the UFA start date. September 25th is when we're going to see buyouts happen. And I think we are going to see some buyouts, and a significant amount compared to other seasons, especially on the bigger teams where they know they can move. They've got a little bit more cash to work with to be able to do this. So, but yeah, I do think that it's going to be very interesting to see what happens. If you was it Rick Dollywell updated everyone on what he's been hearing. The Canucks are working hard with Markstrom and Toffoli right now, trying to figure out what they're looking at. And then once that happens, then and as well as I think what happens with when they can figure out what they can do with Eriksson, whether it is trade, buyout, or Barry, they'll be able to make a decision on Tanev and in result make a decision on Stetcher, because if they bring back Tanev and they bring back Stetcher, then they're going to how are they going to improve their blue line? They're going to have to add a significant left shot defenseman to play behind Edler and Hughes. It's a weird. It's going to be a very interesting decision for them to make, because I don't know what the right move is. Yes, you've got Hughes, who's the number 1 defenseman with a bullet, but after him on the left side going forwards, you've got a whole bunch of question marks. You got Rathbone, who hasn't played professional hockey. You've got Hugh Levy, who's finally looking like a potential NHL defenseman, but has played one game. That's it.
Yeah.
And then on the right side, they're even more barren in terms of potential NHL defensemen. They've got Rafferty, who lit up the AHL last year, and then Jet Wu, who's turning pro this upcoming season. So you don't know what's going on. You don't really have an idea of what there. So either way, they shouldn't be, in my opinion, they shouldn't be locking themselves in on just acquiring a right shot defenseman. I think they could sign Tanev and Stetcher and then bring in another left shot. I don't think that should be thrown out the window as an idea. I think that'd be a great idea, and actually, in my opinion, I think it would work. I think it would be something that would make sense.
I think if Tanev hits the open market, there's going to be a lot of interest there. The way he performed in the playoffs this year was just awesome, and I'm sure there's interest out there. I kind of feel like it's going to be harder to bring back Tanev than it would be with Stetcher, who's just a restricted free agent, if I'm not mistaken. So, but we'll see. If both Tanev and Stetcher are back, does the defense change at all, really? Because we've already had Jim Benning on record saying he thinks Ole Ulevi's ready to be an NHL defenseman. So, come training camp next year, he's going to be pushing for a spot. Where does that leave anybody else, right? I mean, they're in with Edler for another year. They're in with Myers. There's only so many spots.
Exactly, and that's where I'm at. What happens with Stetcher? Really, the term really comes down to what they do with Tanev. If they bring back Tanev, I think Stetcher becomes a trade chip. If they don't bring back Tanev, they're going to re-sign Stetcher, and he's going to play a more significant role. But they're still going to have to bring in someone else to help change up that blue line.
Yeah, I have to agree in the sense that Stetcher did play well this past season, and he proved that he could be a core piece. But it, like Sean suggested, it depends on how these dominoes fall. Money only goes so far.
As much as I love Troy Stetcher, I always look at my top four defensemen and say, what is the extra thing that they bring? Tyler Myers, he's a decent puck mover, and his size makes a big difference. Edler's experience and being able to play all situations makes a difference. Quinn Hughes, we all know his skating and his hockey sense makes a difference. Chris Tanev is a absolute stud defensive defenseman, elite defensive defenseman, makes a difference. What is Troy Stetcher? He works hard, he's a solid player, but I don't think he brings anything extra, and that's my only issue with him. I love him as a number 4, number 5 defenseman, but if they're gonna improve the defense, it's still not going to be Troy Stetcher playing significant top 4 minutes on the power play or on the penalty kill. It's going to be someone else.
I think
he's kind of missing that X factor.
Yeah, but I also don't know if we've seen the full development of Troy Stetcher yet. I don't know if he's necessary. I think he's about to find his legs. I think in the playoffs we certainly saw some more. We're seeing the growth of him. So I wouldn't although there's not a clear answer yet. I wouldn't say that there's nothing that keeps him out of there either. Except if you're acquiring a better piece, I think he's certainly possible. I wouldn't say that he's the 7-8. I certainly wouldn't mind him on my defense. I'll say that. I think he brings more than Jordy Ben.
Oh, he definitely brings more than Jordy Ben. He brings more than Fansenberg, but both of those defensemen are bottom pair defensemen. Yeah. He's the best bottom pair defenseman the Canucks have. There's nothing wrong with that. You need those players on a competitive team. On a cup contending team, Troy Stetcher is a number 5 defenseman. Mm-hmm. I don't know what that X factor is that he can bring though. He hasn't shown any flashes or anything. He's solid, but he just doesn't bring anything significantly good to the table. And I think that's and when I'm looking for a top 4 defenseman, that's what I look for. It's the same issue that I've had with Rasmus Anderson. I've seen a little bit more from him, but he still isn't showing anything that's an X factor for me to be a significant top 4, top pair defenseman. So with Troy Stecher,
I disagree with you about Rasmus Anderson. I
know I'm lower on Anderson than Devin, you, and Heidi. I think that's because I'm a little more rational about it. I don't, I'll not get into it that now. But in terms of Troy Stecher, I just think that it's, like I said, he's a perfect number 5 defenseman. He can play up and down the lineup whenever needed, when needed. But to play 82 games or however long the season is, as in a top 4 role, you need to bring an X factor. You need to bring something to the table that's going to make a difference in the games more often than not. And that's not something that Troy has right now. I don't know what it could be.
Well, for me, what it could be is, more scoring. He has shown flashes of offensive brilliance there, but just not enough of it to really say, okay, God, what a must-have this guy is, right? I think that's where.
And then his mistakes are glaring too, right? Like that's the other thing is when he makes a mistake, it's a noticeable mistake.
But that's defense for you. I mean, there's there's no D-man out there that doesn't mess one up once in a while. I mean, it's the mistakes show.
Yeah, and exactly. But in terms of, I love Troy Stecher. I love what he brings to the team. And if we weren't in a salary cap era, he'd be a folk hero that would be on the Canucks for years and likely his career. But we're in a salary cap era, and you have to make tough decisions.
Mm-hmm.
And you have, even if it is fan favorites and all that, you have to make tough decisions. And that's where the Canucks are at. They've got a veteran defenseman who brings significant defensive prowess and very underrated smart passing to the ice and off ice leadership in Chris Tanev, but the questions are durability with all his injuries over the seasons, and then you've got a younger, smaller defenseman who's a solid skater, a solid defender, a solid this, solid that, but doesn't actually bring anything significant. If they bring back Troy Stecher, he's still gonna start the season as your number 5 defenseman. Maybe he does pair with Edler again, but he's not going to get power play time and he's not going to get penalty kill time because that's not that's not his role on this team. That's why he's the number 5 defenseman. Everyone looks at the pairs at the beginning of every game and they go Edler, Stecher, Hughes, Tanev, Vandenberg Myers, Ben Myers, and they're like, oh, we're paying $6 million for a third pair defenseman. I'm like, well, no, because Myers gets power play time and Myers gets penalty kill time. Stecher does not. Yeah. Like you have to look at all the other things, and as much as like I said, it's just that's one of the big questions going and questions that needs to be answered and big puzzle pieces that the Canucks need to figure out this offseason is how do they fix this blue line.
Just for completeness here, are we all in agreement that Oscar Vandenberg's not going to be back? He was under a 1-year contract, I believe.
Oh, I think someone will. I don't think he's a necessity on the Canucks. I think
if they can move Jordy Ben out and they want a veteran 6-7 defenseman to go to roll with potentially Hugh Levy, if they go with that, then he'll be back. But if not, then yeah, he's just a numbers casualty on the Canucks at that point because him and Ben would both be on a deep team, great 7th, 8th options, obviously, but how do you afford that?
Well, here, let me throw 3 names at you here, just see where you're at. Oh, by the way, Sean, that was your brother. He heard your comments about Rasmus Anderson. And he said you're wrong. That's I don't know. Like he added some effins in there too. So you guys can talk about.
He also took offense to the rational part too.
Yeah, he took. Yeah. I think there was a FU or something about that. Tyson Barrie, where are you at with him? BC Bowl.
It depends on the price. Again, if they bring in Tyson Barrie, it's a very risky move in my opinion. If he comes in on like a 1 or 2 year deal, which I doubt, at a lower than market cap hit, it's gonna, like, you got to give him the shot. But I just don't think it with the cap hit and the term that he's going to want, he's going to fit in with the Canucks.
I don't see I don't see there being any room for him there with Hughes, Edler, and Myers, and taking up 3 of the spots. Kind of where do you fit Barrie in after that? It doesn't seem to be realistic. There'd have to be a fairly big shakeup there, a trade or something.
And that's the other thing, is he doesn't fit in. If you look at the way why he struggled so much in Toronto, is that he wasn't getting the top power play time. So unless the Canucks sign him and decide to go to a 3 forwards, 2 defense power play unit, because you're not taking Hughes off that unit, then I don't see why it makes sense for him to come to Vancouver, unless he's just literally coming here because he likes what the Canucks are doing and wants just to win a cup, and he's willing to take a lesser role. But I don't think that's going to happen.
Yeah, that's what we call wishful thinking. Okay,
exactly,
like that.
Right?
That just
that's
it's fun to dream that up, but it's how often does it happen? I mean, it's almost never, right?
Yeah, it just doesn't seem like a good fit.
Mark Borowiecki.
He to me, he feels like another Jordy Ben, another Fantenberg, someone who plays well who play well on the bottom pair, not someone who's going to actually improve the defense enough for what the Canucks need.
Okay. Everyone on the same page with Alan?
Well, I would just be amazed to see him not in an Ottawa Senators uniform.
I just want to see him interview Francesco Aquilini. Like he dated Gene Melnick. Then you could do like a comparison.
Oh.
Who's just a better interview? No interest there. Huh?
Yeah, no.
Travis Hamonic.
Again, the Canucks have a better version of Hamonic in Tanev. So if you're going to bring back or bring in a defensive defenseman, it's got to be Tanev, in my opinion. I don't see why you would do what the Canucks need someone who can move the puck better. So you're not going to go away. Just let Tanev walk to bring in a Hamonic who's going to make very similar money.
Yeah, again, doesn't seem like the greatest fit, especially if we are going to resign Tanev, which it definitely seems like they're at least making their due diligence attempt at it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'll just wait to hear. Tyler, were you going to say something?
Well, the thing with Tanev is it's going to, like it always does, comes down to money and term, right? I mean, the Canucks would love to have him back. Tanev would love to be back. But there's only so far they can go before it becomes a really reckless signing. And, the Canucks it's well documented. They've made a few of those already. So,
and I think I do think another team is going to make a reckless attempt, and at Tanev. Like I really do believe that. I know.
Yeah, the way he showcased himself here in this this summer hockey tournament bubble thing, and there'll be interest for sure.
Yeah.
The reckless will be the term there, Kev. Won't be the cap hit.
Yeah.
Okay, like this is incumbent on the fact that I'm going to precurse this, that Markstrom is not back, so you have possibly room. But do you make a pitch for Alex Pietrangelo? I say yes, because I do think that would be a significant upgrade if you're not going to bring back Markstrom. But he might be out of the price range, but I certainly would not look at it.
You'd think ownership would really be keen on that idea, but
he's by far the best defenseman available on the market, and it's not even close. If there's a way to make it work cap wise, you make it happen.
Yep.
Okay. All right.
So, simple enough for you, Kev.
I mean, but I think it's what it does say to me though is there are some options that probably are better fits than others, and I think to me, I don't know, Tyler, we didn't hear your priorities, but for me, my priority is number one, Markstrom. I think you bring back Markstrom. I think you got to try to bring back Toffoli. I don't know how long you signed Toffoli for. That's my question. And then number three is Tanev. In my mind, I don't know where you're at with that, but if you're not bringing back Markstrom, I do think that there's a run for Pietrangelo in there for sure.
I agree. Markstrom's the top priority to figure out what they're doing there. I would say then it's Tanev after that. Just in terms of what he means to the organization on and off the ice, and that if they don't have him back, it's an enormous hole on their defense to fill. So then you got to figure out what you're doing there, and then whatever money you have left, you try to upgrade your forwards.
Actually, my take has kind of evolved over time. The more I think about it, the more I'm okay with letting Markstrom walk and to go aggressively after Toffoli, I think would be the most prudent thing for the Canucks. But that's just my opinion at this moment in time.
The one thing we haven't touched on in terms of Markstrom, is how is his structure. It sounds like he is willing to not have a no movement clause for at least the first season, to allow the Canucks the flexibility with the expansion draft. They don't have to protect him if say Demko plays out of his mind, and then he can go down to Seattle and play there and still get paid. I think he'd be totally fine with that. And I think that's something, if that's what they're working towards, that works, because I think one of the biggest issues with the Brodin signing for me was the handcuffing of who Minnesota needs to protect going into the expansion draft. Canucks got firsthand who the Wild lost in the expansion draft because of being handcuffed last time in Alex Tuch. They don't want to have that come bite them in the butt again, and so for the Canucks, that's a big thing going into it. They currently do not have any no movement clauses that are going to handcuff them, and I think they really want to make sure that they don't have anything like that going into whenever that expansion draft is next year.
And that's probably why it's taken this long, is because of all the intricacies of how they need to negotiate this contract.
Yeah.
And then then you've got the other wild card. We'll talk about this a little bit later, but then you possibly have Ben Bishop possibly going on the market. You have Marc-Andre Fleury that will probably be on the market, depending on where Dallas is at. If Dallas wins the cup, that's an interesting question what you do with Ben Bishop, but we'll get into that a little bit later. So let's talk buyouts. I have to be honest. I tried to read what Sean is trying to say, and I've been in school, and maybe my brain is still a little mush, and I'm missing something. But Sean is suggesting an idea about keeping Louis Eriksson for one more year. I'm going to let Sean talk this through, and
Okay, this is under the assumption that the Canucks cannot find a trade partner for Louis Eriksson. I think there might be a trade out there for him that might work. There are going to be teams that are going to be cash strapped, but still need to hit the lower ceiling of the cap. Looking at you, Arizona, potentially Ottawa, and others. Louis Eriksson only has $5 million left on his deal for the next 2 seasons. He was paid his signing bonus for this upcoming season already, which was $3 million. So he's only owed $1 million in salary for this upcoming season. And then he's got a $1 million signing bonus and a $3 million salary for his final year. So I think there might be a trade partner out there that might make it work. But if that's not there, then the Canucks need to look at other options to clear out cap space and roster spots. So Louis Eriksson makes his cap hit is $6 million. If you bury him in the minors, you're able to clear up $1.075 million in cap space. So buying him out this season doesn't make sense for cap reasons, because A, you end up with a longer. You have to pay off the buyout in the equal amounts of years left after the contract is done. So he's going to have the Canucks will have to have a cap hit of basically $667,000 for 2 seasons after the 21-22 season if they were to buy him out in this off season.
Yeah.
And the Saints are still paying Spooner out.
Yes. And the cap relief, his cap hit on this season would be 5.66 repeating $1 million as opposed to 4.925, which is what it would be if they buried him. So buying him out this season makes no sense. Not only yes, you open up a little bit more cap room next year, but for this year when you're already cash strapped and then you're adding more throughout the seasons, adding more seasons with some dead cap, I don't think makes sense for the Canucks at this point. So in a worst case scenario, you bury him in the minors or send him to Sweden or whatever, and his cap hit is $4.925 million, and then you buy him out next year and then if you can't find a trade partner, and his cap hit at that point would be $4 million as opposed to the 4.925. And then you only have 1 season of $1 million of dead cap space afterwards. So hopefully the Canucks can find a trade partner, but worst case scenario, it makes a lot more out of these scenarios. It makes more sense for the Canucks to suck it up with Louis Eriksson for 1 more season, and at worst case scenario, send him down to the minors and then buy him out after this upcoming season.
Yeah, I agree.
Kev, as much as I agree with you on your promo for this podcast episode, after Sean explaining himself, I'm with Sean on that one.
Oh, I did that for promo work. I'm not.
Just promotional purposes only, Chris.
Yeah, you get people to listen to the damn podcast here.
And again, going back to talking about Pettersson and Hughes, that at that point, every nickel and dime is going to mean a lot to the Canucks. So the more cap space you open up, the better. So hopefully the Canucks can find a trade partner to take Louis Eriksson off their hands, even if it is just to where they get part of his contract off or for this upcoming season, maybe even whatever. But if not, I think it looking at the numbers, in my opinion, I got into a big argument with someone on Twitter about it because they think it makes no sense to buy him out at all. I think it makes sense to buy him out after this upcoming season if they can't find a trade partner.
Okay, let me be the other GM here just for a second, and I just because I have the ability to do this. Why am I acquiring Louis Eriksson? What am I getting?
You're getting a good third line
salary. What am I actually getting in the player named Louis Eriksson?
You're getting a good third line player who you can put with a couple young players and get them a puck and he can do all the little things to help them be successful. If you look at, yes, he doesn't produce, but if you look, Travis Green was not afraid to play him on the second line with Bo Horvat and Tanner Pearson because he was able to win the puck battles in the neutral zone, make the small passes to get the puck to Bo Horvat or Tanner Pearson, and for them to allow them to create offense. He's not worth $6 million in cap, that's for sure, but you're still getting an NHL player. Now, remember, Kevin, this is coming with, sorry, Tyler, a sweetener. They're not trading Louis Eriksson for a 6th or 7th round pick.
No,
they're trading Louis Eriksson for like a 5th round pick and they're giving up a 2nd or 1st or whatever, right? They're going to have to give up a significant piece, or it could be one of the young players, could be a Stetcher, could be a Virtanen. Like, it's just, there's going to be a significant piece going with Eriksson in one of these trades if it happens. And you talked about it earlier.
He's a bit, at best, a bit piece for a trade for me, but
Well, remember how many is it Marion Hossa is a Arizona Coyote. They picked him up for the express reasoning to stay above the cap floor.
I just don't know if teams. I guess my question is are teams going to be doing that? Like, there's a part of me with the Marion Hossa situation. There wasn't a lot of PTOs being handed out. Because if the Canucks decide to buy out Eriksson, and I could bring Eriksson in on a PTO and see if he earns a spot.
Yeah, but it's that you're not thinking cap wise here. The old one that was it. I think it was Bob McKenzie. It wasn't Bob McKenzie. It was one of the insiders was talking. Pierre LeBrun. Pierre LeBrun was talking about, take a look at the players whose cap hits are higher than the cash they're owed. That is very valuable to some teams. Some of the bigger trades that the Ottawa Senators have made in the past 2 years have had that piece in them. They've traded away lower cap hits for higher cap hits because the higher cap hits were owed less money.
Mm-hmm.
I want to say Callahan is actually being paid by the Ottawa Senators right now.
I don't think Callahan is, but Gaborik.
Gaborik is. Callahan, I think, is being paid by Tampa, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah.
But
Brendan Archuleta said that. I'm going to see if I can pull that up.
But Ottawa has a few players whose contracts they were using to do that are up. So there might be a fit there for that specific reason. Benning has tried and he's continuing to try, but he's also released the hounds in terms of JP Barry and trying to use him as a negotiating tool as well now. So again, it's if you're looking specifically at the value of the player based off of his cap hit, it's not worth it. But if you're looking at for lower teams that are playing with a budget and not our cap teams and need to get above the cap floor, there might be a trade there for the Canucks to move his cap hit. Now again, I think they're either going to have to give up a really significant young piece, or they're going to have to bring cap back as well. So it's not an easy move to make, but I think there might be something there.
So to go back to Callahan real quick, I pull it up on his Wikipedia. With 1 season remaining on his initial 6-year deal, Callahan's contract was traded by the Lightning along with a 2020 5th-round pick to the Senators in exchange for Mike Condon and a 2020 6th-round pick.
Okay.
Yeah.
Go.
Yeah, like there's stuff like that exactly where you actually end up getting less back, but you've gotten rid of cap. So again, I think there is a move, but if not, they have to look at the buyout route, I think.
Well, there's going to be the Oilers with James Neal, the Flames with Lucic. Although I think the Flames will want to bring Lucic back.
The Flames are going to buy out Lucic.
What's that?
Flames aren't going to buy out Lucic, and I don't think the Oilers will buy out James Neal.
Just going through some of the names that were here. We got Andrew Ladd with the Islanders. I think that's another situation. There's going to be a few. Kyle Okposo. So we'll see. I mean, I don't think the Flames are buying out Lucic. I think he's back for the year. I do wonder what the Oilers are going to do with Neal. That'll be an interesting one. There's a few other pieces, but I don't know. I'm not sold yet, but I can see where you're coming from.
Like I said, it's a tough trade. I think it's likely it doesn't happen, but if it does, that's the reason why they do it, is because they need the cap to go up to get up to the cap floor. You've got frugal owners who will quote unquote value a contract where the cap hit is higher than the actual cash owed. Like I said, Eriksson's owed $1 million for this season and $4 million for next, when his cap hit is $6 million.
Well, we should put that out as a poll question. I'll edit this out. people are at. Anything else on the Canucks that we need to talk about?
I just want to say I was really impressed with what Quinn Hughes had to say in his exit interview with the media. He's the confidence that kid has. It's not a cocky confidence. It's a quiet confidence, and I just love it. It's really nice to see him have that confidence after one season, and it's going to be very interesting to see what happens on Tuesday or Monday or Tuesday when they announce the winners of the major awards, including the Calder, because I think it's going to be very close between Makar and Hughes coming down to the wire there with the vote.
And on that same note, I think Brock is handling, in his exit interview, he's handling all these trade rumors quite well.
Well, again, I think he understands it. It's like the Canucks aren't actually shopping him. They're listening, and if they get the right offer, it might happen, but I don't think they will.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Yeah, agree on those points. So the Stanley Cup final is on. We are a little bit over an hour into this podcast, and we haven't even talked about the Stanley Cup final. Where are you in the interest of this? Is this a final that you're going to go out of your way to watch? Or are you hockeyed out at this point?
I always tend to watch the Stanley Cup final regardless of teams that are in it. I just enjoy watching that intense level of playoff hockey. So I'll be watching it.
Yeah, I'll definitely be watching it. It's going to be an interesting matchup with the high-flying Lightning versus the shut 'em down Dallas Stars. Lightning just went through that with the playing against the Islanders, but I think that it's going to be even more interesting going against the Stars. And if Khudobin can continue to play as at the top of his game like he has, it's going to be a long series.
I was feeling a little hockeyed out, Kev, right after the Canucks were eliminated. I mean, it was such a condensed schedule there. I think it was like 5 games in 7 nights or something like that. So, just mentally it was very exhausting. Needed a little break from watching hockey. But now that the Stanley Cup final's on, it's every couple of days. When time allows, I'll definitely be watching. There's nothing quite like the Stanley Cup final. It's the peak of hockey intensity. Obviously a lot different this year being at a neutral site with no fans, but 2 very deserving teams that are in the final. And, I'd be fine with either result there, but I'm like most people, Rick Bowness, to see him lift the cup would be fantastic. Obviously, with his time in Vancouver, we all have a lot of respect for Rick Bowness. So that would be good. But then, John Cooper, he's been knocking at this door for a long time as well. And that would be a fun story there. And also, if Tampa were to win after touching the Prince of Wales trophy, that would be kind of fun as well. So should be a good Stanley Cup final.
Yeah, I'm excited. I think that this will be closer than I don't know if I'll make a prediction, but I do think this will be longer than people think. I think the Lightning are not necessarily. I don't think the Lightning are coming in the more healthier team, and that feels like Dallas. I still don't know how Hoboden does it, but he's gotten the job done. And I think that this is Victor Hedman versus Miro Heiskanen, and Miro Heiskanen, I think, is just going to be a fun watch. I know that we usually like forwards, but those are 2 of the better defensemen in the National Hockey League. I think it's hard pressed right now for me to not say Victor Hedman's probably not the best defenseman in the National Hockey League. I think it would hard to argue me off that ledge at this particular point in time, but I really like what Heiskanen brings. And then you have Joe Pavelski and Corey Perry, who have been around this before. You have a Tampa Bay team who has been knocking at this door for so long. And, the other BC side of this is John Cooper's from Prince George. And so I don't know. I'm absolutely going to be watching for sure. I'm intrigued.
Yeah, and I know there's not very many asterisk people out there, but in terms of the legitimacy of whoever wins this cup, it should be noted that that's 2 teams that were not part of the qualifying round that are there. There's no 9 through 12 seed that got all the way to the Stanley Cup final. It's two strong teams that were strong before the pause that are competing for the cup now and looking for wins 13, 14, 15, and 16 here in this postseason.
And I think the other thing with the asterisk is there's been no break. This has been full on intense. Like, we're back at it. We have a day off, but we're back at it again.
Yeah.
So, like,
Well, they're even doing it back to back Monday, Tuesday.
Yeah. Yeah, again, scheduling, of course, if the games are to be played in prime time, they can't have one on a Sunday. That competes with NBC's Sunday Night Football, so that's one reason. And I think there is a U.S. presidential debate they are looking to schedule around as well. So that is a couple of reasons for the back-to-back games 4 and 5. What is it, Monday, Tuesday, or Tuesday, Wednesday next week? Can't remember, but yeah.
And
or is it Thursday, Friday? Well, something like that later in the week.
Yeah.
Friday, Saturday, game 4 and 5.
Thank you. Friday, Saturday next week.
Mm-hmm.
My one sad thing, and I know that he's loved out here, and I appreciate him, but my God, I really enjoyed Chris Cuthbert. I know there were times he stumbled through some things, but I'm going to miss him, and I wish he got the opportunity. I know he's going to probably get to call the Stanley Cup final next year, but it would have been so great to hear him this year, and I'm going to miss him, and for me, would have been a fresher voice to hear. And no disrespect to Jim Houston, I just think Chris Cuthbert deserved it. I'm sad it's not him.
Chris seems to be able to bring the energy despite an empty building. That's the big thing.
They were never going to give Chris Cuthbert the cup final this year. It was always going to be Jim Houston. The reason Cuthbert signed on is that they probably promised him next year.
I agree with Sean's logic, but as far as the heart part of it, I'm with Kev, because like the fact that he was the guy calling the Edmonton stuff and the fact that they're doing the Stanley Cup final in Edmonton, like it just would have been the nice button on, or the cherry on top, if you will.
But they're two of the best. Like, they are literally two of the best. Don't listen to Toronto Maple Leafs fans who whinge about Jim Houston because they got all upset about him getting excited about the 2011 run. Like, let's focus in on what is right, and that Houston and Cuthbert, they aren't perfect, but they're two of the best in calling hockey.
And as far as trying to be perfect, I mean, these guys are used to, basically calling a series each round, following a couple of teams. I know when you're working for NBC or TSN, you're kind of jumping around a bit, but the amount of games and the amount of prep and the amount of stuff you got to remember the way it was earlier in the runs. I mean, even in the conference semifinals, the so-called second round, I mean, each of them were both covering 2 series in their entirety. So there's going to be some errors that happen, but I mean, can you outside of Gord Miller or John Forsland out of the U.S., just to name a couple, can you find a couple of better play-by-play guys? I don't think so. Yeah, and I'm not. It's not that I don't like Jim Houston. I think that this comes down to style, and I just like Chris Cuthbert's. I'm more preferable to Chris Cuthbert's style over Jim Houston's, and that's not to dismay that I think he's biased or anything like that. I just would have loved to see Chris Cuthbert get that shot.
He's going to get it next year.
Yeah, for sure. I know. Okay.
Yeah, Chris wouldn't even want it under these circumstances. He'd want it under the normal circumstances.
Right. Yeah. And I'm also really starting to enjoy Louis. I enjoy Louis DeBrusque as a commentator when he's not calling Oilers games. I find him a little more objective, but when he's calling Oilers games, I think he wears his Oilers heart on his sleeve, which.
Yeah, I don't hear that. The main thing for me with Louis DeBrusque is that he doesn't bug me as a color commentator. Like, the insight can be a little thin at times, but he's not a color guy that's driving me nuts when I'm listening to the games. And a lot of the times you get color guys that you just want them to stop, where it's too much. And and that's not just the Pierre Maguires out there. There's others as well that just start to grate on you after a while. I remember going back to the West Coast Express days when Cuthbert was paired up with Greg Mill, and he was driving everybody nuts as well when watching games. So Louis, the type of color commentator, while maybe not the most insightful, is sounds good, speaks well, doesn't drive you nuts as a viewer. So that's good. I'll take that any day.
Yeah, for sure. Anything else we need to talk about?
No, I don't think so.
No. Other than the draft will soon be upon us.
Yes,
we haven't talked about the draft, but that'll be something to start looking forward to.
We'll get into that in a couple weeks or so. We've got some other things going on. Lots going on. How do we follow everyone?
I am BeardyConnect03 on Twitter.
And I'm on Twitter at tnoble, TNOBLE.
I'm at Schneids on most social media.
And there's Devin as GordHouse09 on Twitter. Heidi is Hyde Amazeballs on Twitter. And you can follow us podcast_hockey. And there's a comment, Tyler. Tyler, there is a question from Dennis Pierce who wants to know your predictions on the final.
Oh, hey, Junior. I'm gonna go with the Stars. I've just been so impressed with what they've been able to do in this postseason, and there's the old adage about defense wins championships, and it's hard to argue against the Stars in that regard. So, how many games? I think we're going 6 or 7, definitely here in this series, but I'll have to lean towards Dallas.
And if the Stars do pull it off, how can you not give the Conn Smythe to Heiskanen?
Well, Khudobin's going to make a strong argument there.
Fair.
Yeah.
I'll eat my words in terms of the performance Khudobin's putting in, but Heiskanen's definitely impressed.
Yeah. I just hope Braden Point can keep lighting it up. Otherwise, my hockey pool lead's going to dwindle.
I'm hoping for that to happen.
You're 14 points back, Chris.
But I'm still in the upper echelon.
He has a right to hope.
Yeah, well, story time here. The first this is the Pick and Duke playoff pool, and the first playoff pool I did with Steven and at the Pick and Duke, I was in third place for solidly in third place for most of the playoffs, and one of their cooks, Reggie, this was the year that the Penguins and the Preds played in the final, and he had Matt Murray, and he was the only player that he had left, and he thought he was done. And because they called back the goal in game 1, and then in the clinching game they called back a goal and which gave the shutouts to Matt Murray in both those games, I ended up losing out on being in the money in that pool. So I am just hoping that I don't see a repeat of that this year. With all I've got left is Braden Point, and I've got three teams, 3 people, including Chris, chasing me down with players still in there. So hoping that I can hang on and not get sniped at the end again.
I honestly feel this is a matchup that's going to work well for my team, though, because I happen to have 3 Stars and Kucherov.
Yeah, but one is Ben Bishop, Chris.
Fair.
Yeah,
but Radulov has been huge for me, and Seguin, while not being good at the start, has been pretty good in the back half of the playoffs.
Yeah, Chris really has Radulov and Seguin, and he's got Kucherov. So he's the one that I've got my eye on more than anything else. As long as Point continues to put up points when the Lightning win, I should still be good though. Hopefully.
Well, keep us updated. We'll kind of talk about how we'll cover the Stanley Cup. Maybe we'll talk off air, see what we'll do about that. But we've got everybody there. Story time has happened. Podcast_hockey. Subscribe, like us on YouTube. Give us nice feedback. Thanks everyone, especially Noble Nation, for jumping on. And we will talk to you all very soon. Bye for now. Start here. 1 2, 3. Hey, Sean.
Mm-hmm.
Is it possible you could kill the YouTube stream? The podcast will start in approximately 1 minute.
I will.
I didn't check the numbers on that yet.
Not sure that we can shut down the YouTube here.
Oh, if Sean has the ability through the YouTube that I think he could.
Yeah, I can. Like you hit end and everything on the.
Louis
on the-
Eriksson $5 million left on his deal for the next 2
Here,
seasons.
I'll put stop.